Welcome, we are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and this is a very, very short video verifying that Yeshua Mashiach, Jesus the Messiah, spoke Aramaic, not Greek or Latin, even though he, being the Christ, may have known all languages. Being the Christ. We found this video in the public domain, public access, so there shouldn't be any copyright claim or breach or other. It wasn't intended. We will look at this video where there's a meeting between, or interview between, Pope Francis and Netanyahu and a Russian interpreter. We'll have a look at that and look at the comments below later. After that.
קשר של הנצרות ליהדות, שזו שואבים מבאר אחת. ישו היה פה בארץ הזאת, דיבר עברית, ארמית, דיבר ערבית, דיבר ערבית, דיבר עברית.
So, there's Netanyahu, the Russian interpreter, and Pope Francis, who corrected him, saying that Christ spoke Aramaic, and then the interviewer says, yeah, he spoke Aramaic and Hebrew. Okay, according to the native board Aramaic translator from Mesopotamia, Victor Alexander, he actually spoke Galilean Aramaic, which was supposedly the lingua franca, or the trendy language, the language that was being spoken in that area at the time. And we have a description. It did say there was a review, one review, but didn't see it. There's only this description. Netanyahu said Jesus spoke Hebrew, while Pope Francis immediately corrects him by pointing out that Jesus Christ, or Yeshua Mashiach, spoke Aramaic. But Netanyahu goes on to claim that Jesus spoke Aramaic, but he knew Hebrew. But, well, it was actually that's what he said, and then the guy in the middle translated it. But according to Dead Sea Scrolls, archaeologist Yigal Yadin, Aramaic was the language of Hebrews, 1st century Israel, and early 2nd century, until false Messiah Simon Bar Kokhba tried to revive Hebrew and make Hebrew as the official language of Hebrews during Bar Kokhba revolt 132-135 AD. They considered him at that point a Messiah or a deliverer, because he tried to free his people from Roman tyranny, but he ended up getting caught in a valley somewhere and was beheaded. And then this new Messiah came, right? But he had a different ideal, right? He was going to use weapons or anything like that, or deliver the people from Roman tyranny and sit on the throne as a king, as they wanted. He had a completely different program. Yigal Yadin noticed the shift from Aramaic to Hebrew during the time of Bar Kokhba revolt. In book Bar Kokhba, the rediscovery of the legendary hero of the last Jewish revolt against Imperial Rome, Yigal Yadin notes it is interesting that the earlier documents are written in Aramaic, while the later ones are in Hebrew. Possibly the change was made by a special decree of Bar Kokhba, who wanted to restore Hebrew as the official language of the state. Page 181. In the book, A Roadmap to the Heavens, an anthropological study of hegemony among priests, sages and laymen, Judaism and Jewish life by Sigalet Ben Zion, page 155, Yadin remarks, it seemed that this change came as a result of the order that was given by Bar Kokhba, who wanted to revive the Hebrew language and make it the official language of the state. According to the book Naming the Witch, Magic, Ideology and Stereotype, in the Ancient World, written by Kimberly B. Stratton, page 232. Yadin suggests that Bar Kokhba was trying to revive Hebrew by decree as part of his messianic ideology. So this person is trying to verify 3 times through three different sources that that's what he was trying to do, right? Try to restore the Hebrew to his countrymen, etc. In Acts 1:19, field of blood was known to all the inhabitants of Jerusalem in their own language as Akal-Dama, which is a transliteration of the Aramaic words Hakal-Dama. In his works, Hebrew priest Josephus calls Hebrews as Hebrew tongue, while he still calls Aramaic as our tongue, our language, or the language of our country. This is new to us, that he was actually a priest. He was adopted by the Flavians or Flavius and became his stepson, and that's why he had the end name or beginning name Josephus Flavius or Flavius Josephus, a Jew that had become a Roman. Unlike Josephus and other Hebrew priests at Jerusalem, nobody else had any knowledge of Hebrew in 1st century Israel. A lot of top theologians, especially Bart D. Eamon, say you can't really trust Josephus. His writings was all politically motivated because he was of that Roman court, right, etc., as a Flavian, part of the Flavian family. Plus, he suggests that over time Christian scholars may have added to the writings of Josephus, put words into his mouth to verify that Jesus existed, etc. Unlike Josephus and other Hebrew priests at Jerusalem, nobody else had any knowledge of Hebrew in 1st century Israel. That's why whenever they say Hebrew in New Testament, the word comes up is Aramaic. The word that comes up is Aramaic. For example, Golgotha is called Hebrew in John 19:17. We'll have a look at that in the Aramaic New Testament, translated by Victor N. Alexander, translated from Aramaic speaking, translated from Bet Narain or Mesopotamia in Syria. But Golgotha is transliteration of an Aramaic word fa. In Golgotha is the Aramaic definite article on a feminine noun in an emphatic state. Aramaic definite articles are always at the end of a word. If I convert Golgotha into Hebrew, then it will become Ha Goleth. Unlike Aramaic, Hebrew definite article Ha is always at the beginning of a word. Josephus wrote this, Judean Wars, Book 1, Preface, Paragraph 1. I have proposed to myself, for the sake of such as live under the government of the Romans, to translate those books into the Greek tongue, which I formerly composed in the language of our country, and sent to the upper barbarians. Joseph, the son of Matthias, by birth a Hebrew, a priest also, and one who at first fought against the Romans, myself, and was forced to be present at what was done afterwards, am the author of this work. In 1st century AD, Josephus points out that Aramaic was a widespread language and understood accurately among Aramaic speakers. Josephus points out that Parthians, Babylonians, the remotest Arabs, and those of his nation beyond Euphrates with the Adiabeni knew accurately about the Judean wars by his means, mentioned below, and why he translated his work from the language of his country into Greek for Greeks and Romans. Judean Wars, Book 1, Preface, Paragraph 2. I thought it therefore an absurd thing to see the truth falsified in affairs of such great consequence, and to take no notice of it, but to suffer those Greeks and Romans that were not in the wars to be ignorant of these things, and to read either flatteries or fictions, while the Parthians and the Babylonians, and the remotest Arabians, and those of our nation beyond Euphrates, with the Adiabeni, by my means knew accurately both whence the war began, what miseries it brought upon us, and after what manners it ended. Unlike Aramaic, Hebrew wasn't spoken by Parthians, Babylonians, and the remotest Arabians. For more information, check the link for the language of Jesus Christ. It's got it here. It's probably a wiki page. Well, as we verified through the translator, native born Aramaic speaking translator from Bet Narain, Syria, Victor Indy Alexander, Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah, Jesus Christ, spoke Galilean Aramaic. He possibly also knew Hebrew, could read from the Hebrew, speak the Hebrew, and other languages like Greek, etc., or Roman, Latin or Roman, because him being the Christ, he would be capable of speaking any language, right? Possibly. Or theoretically. Here is the actual truth about the language of New Testament. The language of New Testament is Aramaic, not Greek or Hebrew. Here is the below links with all the information to support Aramaic New Testament. So this may be that translated by Messianic Jew Andrew Gabriel Roth. The original Eastern Syriac Peshitta is translated into the nearest English equivalent from the original Apostolic and Catholic Church of the East at his website, thearamaicScriptures.com, which has the Syrian font and the words and then the meanings in English. So if you wanted to learn Syriac, you'd be able to learn it, pick it up easy. Okay, here it has, whenever in the New Testament, whenever the apostles say about being written in Hebrew, John 19:20, they're referring to Aramaic written in Dead Sea Scrolls script. In the first century, Aramaic written in Estrangela script was called Aramaic, called Syriac by Greeks, since Greeks called Aramaeans or Aramites as Syrians. Whenever the apostles say speaking in Hebrew, John 9:17, John 20:16, Acts 22:2, they are referring to either Aramaic accent used in Judea and Idumea, or few certain Aramaic words commonly used among Hebrews living in Judea and Idumea. It must be noted that the Judean is often mistranslated as a Jew. Here is the information about Aramaic version of Josephus' Judean Wars, book 6, which clears so many errors in Greek versions of Judean Wars, book 6, and there's a link there. Okay, if you wanted to go have a look at that. Okay, here, don't know if this is correct, because according to the translator Victor N. Alexander, what we came across was they took the first two letters of their name, it was actually Yahudi or Yahudi or something like that, right? And from that they derived the word Jew. Okay? And then later countries like the Germans and possibly the Chinese used the word Juden. Okay? We're going to have a look at the verse that's indicated here, John 19:17, from the original ancient, very old, hidden episode Galilean Aramaic translations of the original, very ancient, very old Church of the East. We're at John 19:17. Okay, we'll actually show it rather than just read it. Okay, let's have a listen to this. Gospel of John, chapter 19, reading and commentary by Victor Alexander, the translator, from the Ancient Aramaic Scriptures.
Gospel of John, chapter 19. Yuhanna Bepaliun Jessa. Then Pilate had Yeshua flogged.
Skip a bit forward, but
even once, if it were not given to you from above.
Okay, we went a bit too far. Trying to find that particular verse. For some reason it's not playing. Let's start it again.
Gospel of John, chapter 19. Yuhanna Bikaliyun Jasa. Then Pilate had Isha flogged. 18 Pilatus Najdil Isha. And the soldiers wove a wreath of thorns and crowned him with it, and covered him in purple attire. Ustariyute jitlu shlila min chube usamule brishi.
It's quite lengthy, so we're going to try and skip ahead a bit.
And Isha emerged outside with the wreath of thorns and purple garments. And Pilate told them, "Behold the man." Unapik Isha al-Bar, chat it aluhi shlilat it chobe, unkhated arjawani. Wa'amrilhum Pilatus, ha jawra. But as the high priests and the emissaries saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Then you go and nail him to the cross, for I could not find fault with him." Cheddin Chazuhi, how man ashlimnilo, Rabba haikhtite mendilo. And because of this, Pilate desired to release him. But the Judeans cried out that if you release this one, you are not related to Caesar, for whoever makes himself king is rejecting Caesar. Nail your king to the cross? The high priest said to him, "We have no king except for Caesar." Ulhana dippa sajai min yudaye paruhi. مثل بطريثة وديناتا دوشاتا بيستقب به إيشو وجتيوا إبريت ويونانيت ورومايت. Ibrit in the Hebrew dialect of Aramaic. In other words, in the Jerusalem dialect, and not in the Galilean dialect, implicating the Judeans of Jerusalem, and not all the Judeans, and not all the Jews, in other words. This was the intention of Pilate, who wrote this tablet. And the high priests said to Pilate, "Do not write that he was king of the Jews, except that he said that he was king of the Jews." وَإِمْرُوا رَابِي channel Pilatus, لَا تجتو دملچ هاو ديوداي, إِلَّا هاو آمر دملچ أن ديوداي. Pilate said, "I wrote what I wrote." Amr Pilatus, Midem the chitvit. But the soldiers that nailed Isha to the cross took his garments and divided them between the four of them, one to each of the soldiers. But his robe, which was not sewn together, was woven from above entirely.
Okay, we're trying to get to this verse here, just so you can hear what he actually says. For some reason it's not playing. But anyway, here it says, "Thus he, Pilate, delivered him," Yeshua Mashiach, Jesus, to them, to be nailed to the cross. And they seized Joshua, or Jesus the Messiah, and took him out, temple priest, right? And as he took up his cross to the place that is called the skull, but in the Hebrew dialect or language which is called the arena of truth, through torture, where they nailed him to the cross, and with him two others, one on this side and one on the other, and with Joshua or Jesus in the middle. And even the tablet was written by Pilate and placed on the cross. But it was written, thus, here is Joshua Nisrael, King of the Jews. And this passage, or this page, many of the Jews did read, since the place where Joshua was nailed to the cross was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. So footnotes, indications there, and here's the footnotes here. (1917) Gulta, or revealed through torture, the precursor of the torture chamber or area. Yeah, and here's Nusreya, the victorious, because according to Matthew 2:9, which we'll read out from the Aramaic New Testament, it reads as the following. This is Matthew 2:23, page 11 on the Aramaic New Testament, translated in the Aramaic New Testament, translated by Victor N. Alexander. Joseph sees in a dream that he went to the country of Galilee, and he came and lived in a town called Nazareth, so that what the prophets had said came to be fulfilled, that victorious he shall be. And in footnotes state 2:23 in Aramaic pronounced Nusrat, meaning the victorious, or of the town of Nazareth. We did have an Indian girl staying next to us, and her name was Nusrat, and of course that family was Christian, but they've long since moved. So we're going to have a look at John in your newly incorrect version, the NIV. And see what that says, because it probably has a completely different rendering. So you can see the difference between what the original ancient, very old Galilean Aramaic that Jesus and his disciples spoke. You can see the difference between that when it's translated into the nearest English equivalent, and then you compare it with your modern day Americanized English Bible versions, and where they've gone wrong, and that people are teaching you wrong. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. Here they crucified him, and with him two others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin and Greek. The chief priests of the Jews, the temple priests, Pharisees, etc., protested to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be King of the Jews," which sounds like a lie. Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." So that's what it says in your NIV, your modern Americanized Bible version. Look here, up here. For a minute. He took up his cross to the place that is called the skull, but in the Hebrew dialect, which is called the arena of truth through torture. And there's a footnote indication there for verse 17. (1917) Gota, or reveal through the torture. Reveal through torture. The precursor of the torture chamber or area. Okay, so here it says Gota. Here it says Golgotha. This would be the ancient Aramaic, Galilean Aramaic, right? Okay. Trying to figure out if this is here. It says, but in the Hebrew dialect, which is called the arena of truth, through torture. So there's a difference probably there. This is probably the Aramaic, not the Hebrew. I think he's indicating that that's the Aramaic, not indicating that's the Hebrew. So let's go have a look at what that word actually means, if we can. No, doesn't seem to have it here. Here's Golgotha. Definition. Golgotha, Aramaic, skull. Place of the skull. Also called Calvary, from Latin Calva. Okay, so it's not actually Calvary. That's because it's coming from the Latin, right? Bald head or skull. Skull-shaped hill in ancient Jerusalem, the site of Jesus' crucifixion. It is referred to in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. The hill of execution was outside the city walls of Jerusalem, apparently near a road and not far from the sepulchre, the grave area, right? Anything else here? No. Yeah, so we think Victor in Alexander is actually pointing to the Aramaic saying, and or the saying in Aramaic and the meaning. Okay, so hopefully that has not confused you at all. Okay, coming from the mouth of these three people, it verifies that the Christ spoke Aramaic, and from the translator Victor and Alexander from Pete Narine, he spoke Galilean Aramaic. So if you like this video, give us a like, don't forget to subscribe, and then share it with all your family, friends and others, and add your comments down below. We'll get back to you on those as soon as we can.